Hey, Redeemer family. I'm excited to be able to share today's devotional with you. Of course, just like we went through on Sunday, we're going to be going through Psalm 13, which was David's, I think, very exemplary prayer of lament, which helped us to see the way that he brought the pain that was going on in his life honestly to God, to bring his complaints and not to be afraid of retribution or of God being mad at him for the way that he was feeling and the things that he was wrestling with. But in Psalm 13, just to recap a little bit, what we see is David bringing his complaint and bringing his request, but then finally resting on this idea that God has been faithful and generous toward him and toward all of God's people. So David brought these complaints and these requests in confidence to God. I hope that was really helpful to you from the sermon. And of course, as we went through that sermon, most of the applications on Sunday were mostly about personal situations that we're walking through. So in our own circumstance, things that you and I are experiencing, how do we bring that directly to God when we're wrestling with something? But I think there's something much larger to lament, and there's another way that we can apply it that I want to make sure that we don't miss. And that is that lament can actually be used in our prayers for others. You know, we see all around us in our own families and personal relationships and within our church family and then within our world at large, we see a lot of brokenness and pain that is going on. Maybe things that we're not personally experiencing, but things nonetheless that others are experiencing and that can be brought to God in lament. And lament for us can be a way that we pray for others. It can be a way that we empathize with others and the pain that they're walking through. So I want us to think about that just a little bit. What are some ways that we could maybe lament on behalf of others and bring questions and concerns of ours to God on behalf of other people? I think one really clear way that this stands out to me is in our personal relationships. So in your family, with close friends, you know of brokenness that other people are experiencing and pain that they're walking through. Even in our church family, I think one of the blessings we have is this Slack channel where we're constantly communicating, and we have a prayer channel where people will share difficulties that they're going through in ways that they need you and me to pray for them when they're walking through something. Something that I am just so encouraged by is that we so often see people respond right away and say, hey, I'm praying for that. I'm lifting you up in prayer right now. And I want to affirm that and just say, let's continue to do that. But what if in certain situations our prayer was also actually a lament, and we would go to God and spend some time trying to empathize and identify with the way a person in our church family is feeling through darkness that they're wrestling through and some pain that they're walking through, especially when they're going through an extreme circumstance. I mean, every so often we see that happens in our church family. And what if we went to God on their behalf and we said, how long, Lord, must my brother or sister be wrestling through this situation? God, will you release this burden from them? God, will you demonstrate again your faithful love and generosity toward them to either release them from this circumstance or to sustain them through it? What if we really used lament as a way to identify with their pain? I think additionally, we have 2020 has been an infamous year so far. It's been a really difficult year on a lot of grounds, particularly with COVID-19 and with race relations in the United States. We see a lot of pain, we see a lot of suffering, and a lot of brokenness, and a lot of things that are worthy of lament. And what if we, as Christians who know the hope of Christ and who know how to complain in a way that's fueled by faith, what if we were to bring those things to God in prayer and really lament over them and ask, how long, Lord, must our nation wrestle through and our world wrestle through this sickness that is going on? How long must lives continue to be lost? How long must jobs and businesses and livelihoods continue to be lost? God, will you release us from this pandemic? God, will you show your glory in the middle of this pain and suffering? And the same with race relations and some of the social unrest that we've seen. God, how long must we see people's lives be lost who do not deserve that? People who are made in your image dying for no reason at all. How long must we see people at tension with one another because of racial differences? Lord, how long until we see the unity of the book of Revelation when all tribes and tongues worship together in unity under the banner of Christ? What if we used these circumstances that we see not just to to argue about our opinions on those things, but what if we just took that and saw this brokenness for what it is, and we took our lament to God on behalf of others and because of the brokenness in our world? So, what I want to encourage you to do today is, maybe you're walking through something and you're learning this language of lament. Certainly pray on behalf of the situation that you're walking through, and use Psalm 13 as a guide for how to pray. But I also want to encourage you to consider, who are others in my life, and how can I pray for others in our world? Maybe I'm not walking through what they're walking through, but I see this pain and I see this brokenness. How can I bring that to God in lament, bring my complaint, ask for deliverance, and worship God and thank Him for His faithful love toward us, despite all of the brokenness in our world? So let's do that today. Let's bring our laments to God and pray to Him in faith. Thanks, Redeemer.